not coming down. I never left it on the ground. I'm not coming down. I want to go higher, higher, higher than that.
Welcome back to the Business is Human podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, and we're here to bring you episodes that blend meaningful work with profitable success. Here to steward what I call the age of humanity. I believe if we transform the way we work, we can transform the way that we live. As always, my friendly request, if you like what you hear, hit subscribe so you don't miss any episode, and leave a review to tell the other humans that they might like it too. Always looking to help you and connect with others. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Welcome back to Business is Human. Today, I'm going to share a story with permission about a human, one of my clients. And I'm not going to share her name because she really took this request that I had so seriously and has shared with me such depth and vulnerability about her story that I'm not going to share her name. But here was the assignment. I sent her the podcast that I recorded back on, I think it released October 24th of 2024. So about 9 months ago. And it was myself and Eliza Kingsford, who's a neuroscience expert, works mainly in the space of body image, weight loss stuff, but has a deep knowledge and training, certifications, education around the nervous system. And we recorded a podcast about how all of our thoughts come from love or fear. And it was really, that episode planted some seeds for me in the book that I'm writing now. And I have referred it to many, many people, clients and others, because it really causes you to have some real reflection. And so I sent it to this client and I said, hey, I would love for you to listen to this and then observe yourself over the next few months and come back to me with, when you think about all of your thoughts coming from love or fear, how is that helping or hurting you? I was really looking at it as a book research. I didn't want it just to be my own bias. I was having such a strong reaction to it. But I said, you know what? Do this for me. And she said, I would love to do that for you. And the other reason that I asked her to do it is I have such a deep, deep spiritual framework in the way that I see the world. And she doesn't have that same belief. And so I wanted her to really share with me from a nervous system and a behavioral perspective how this was impacting her. And so I was very intentional about who I asked to do this assignment for me. And wow, she said, you know what, I'm just going to record my response. And so she sent me a recording of how many ways that had impacted her. And I've been sitting on this for a few months, trying to decide the best way to bring this into the book that I'm writing now and bring this to you here on the podcast. And so today I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to share with you anonymously what she shared with me. And then you can decide how this is impacting you, how love and fear is impacting you. And I'm going to give you some reflection questions at the end that I think will be helpful for that. So there's some raw and honesty in this story, which I think is what makes it so beautiful and impactful. And too often, you know, even lately, I've shared a lot of business stuff about systems and processes and checklists. And I mean, that's important. We need that too. But today we're just going to get raw and real. This is one woman's journey to really live, lead, heal, not from fear, but from love. But before she could do that, she had to notice it. So in the first area that she noticed the difference between love and fear is a deep and important one, and it's around addiction. And I don't care who you are. We all have vices and struggles with things that we use in ways that may have become unhelpful or damaging to us. And what she shared was that while she was trying to stay away from this thing that she knew was harmful to her body and her life, this thing that she was namely addicted to, so she's dealing with it daily. What was fascinating is that her ability to stay in sobriety had to come from a place of love for self, not from punishment. And so, everybody has their own journey and their own way that they do things. But I thought this was really interesting. She said, I've been keeping small promises to myself. Simple things like having lemon water before I have coffee, meditating, working out. And it's not about that I can't have a drink. She said, it's about I choose to care for myself. And that shifts her nervous system. Now, this is my interpretation. That is shifting her nervous system into I am safe, not I'm afraid to have a drink. Because fear tightens our nervous system and gets us ready for a fight. That's the striving way of life. And love softens. Fear says, don't mess it up or you're going to get in trouble. And love says, you are worth protecting. I love you enough to keep you safe. I love myself enough to keep me safe. And when we act from love, not lack, we're building real healing, not just trying to manage our behaviors. And again, this is her story. It may not be yours. I'm never going to tell you there's a one size fits all. We're not built that way. We're all unique down to our fingerprints on purpose for a purpose. There's several places in the Bible where Jesus got really cranky with people who were trying to just lump everybody in and call them the same. That's not what we're here to do. But I thought this was a really beautiful perspective that she had on something that is very, very important to her quality of life. All right, the next place that she noticed was that when she was getting feedback, in this case, it was from her boss. And the situation was she had a meeting with her boss and she thought things went pretty well. She worked there for a long time. She's not new. She's had significant impact, measurable impact in her role. Got the data to back it up, got receipts. And she thought this meeting had gone really well. And then on a Saturday over the weekend, she gets an email from her boss. And no real context, but some criticism about the meeting. And she said, I read it and immediately got flooded, like felt it in her body, which is how our nervous system, we feel it. And she said it was fear. It was this response that she just felt flooded with fear and emotion. And she said, looking back on it through the lens of love and fear, what she realized was the reason that this criticism hit her so deeply, because she's not the kind of person that wouldn't want critique or criticism or feedback. She's very mature in her business and wants that. She said, but what was different about this one was that it was an email. And so there was no tone, there was no context, there was no conversation, just a text. And that text or email, I can't remember now, immediately caused tension, because she didn't have any of the other things to go along with it. And she said, I spiraled for weeks. Now think about that. This is somebody that is really good at her job, has measurable results, but gets this message without tone or context, and weeks lived in the energy of fear. And we know from understanding our nervous system that when we get triggered and activated in fear, our body has to shut down connection because it thinks we're trying to survive. And because the message didn't come with any connection, It didn't come with any relationship or context or conversation. It was a threat to her safety. And so then her ability to connect turned off because she then was in survival mode. And immediately what followed is her performance started to slip. She started missing deadlines. She started not performing well, not having good conversations. And this is what happens when we deliver feedback, criticism, without context or human connection, without having a conversation and providing tone and eye contact and body language. It shuts us down. And so while our intent as a leader or colleague might be to be helpful, how that gets delivered has everything to do with how we receive it. Our nervous system is running the show, y'all. It just is. And so our nervous system interprets whether that information is dangerous or helpful. And so once we're triggered, then we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex and good, clear decision making, and we go into survival mode, which is exactly what happened with her. And now looking back on it, we've talked about it a couple of times. She said it was fascinating, again, because she's really good at her job. So the takeaway from that, and I'll include it in some reflection questions as we wrap up today, but you may be just running through your list thinking, I need to tell so-and-so this, and I need to email about that. But when we're giving criticism and feedback, we need to make sure that there is a human-to-human connection, whether it's Teams or Zoom. There needs to be some eye contact and some tone of voice in a conversation, not just a dump it into their inbox or their text. So the next area that I thought was really fascinating about her feedback was her relationship at home, her marriage. She said this really hit her. This caused her to really dig deep in her reflection because they have gone through their share of challenges, as most couples do. And she said, what I realized I was doing is I would go through the checklist of behaviors. I would get home at the time I said I was going to. I would stay off my phones. I would, try not to be negative and criticizing. She said, I was checking all of the things off the list of things that we had agreed to as a couple. She said, but it really wasn't about connection. I was trying to avoid triggering him or the relationship. So it was fear of getting in trouble, of not doing what I said I would do or what we had agreed to do to have a better relationship. It wasn't really about love and connection. And she said, once I noticed that, she said, I could do all the right things, but from the wrong source of real energy. Because love energy obviously is very different than fear energy. And so it was about controlling and checking things off the list, not real love and connection. And so she said, you know what, if I'm really going to heal this relationship, I have to shift from fear to love. And sometimes that fear-based decision-making doesn't have anything to do with that particular relationship. Sometimes it goes back to childhood trauma. Sometimes it goes back to other things, but it's the energy that starts to leak into other aspects of our life and cause us problems. So this is, again, when I asked her to do this for me, this was not at all the level of depth that I was anticipating, but it has really been profound in my understanding of how powerful this concept really is. And it's really helping me be more reflective and really informing this book that I'm writing now. The next area that she noticed is about work versus creativity, because she is an artist as well as a business professional and loves to use art to regulate. And we all need to use whatever it is that you've heard me talk about what was 14-year-old you doing for fun. She was painting and drawing. And so she knows that she needs this in order to feel whole, and it helps her relax. But she said, here was what was interesting. She paints murals in her kids' room, and they're so cute. And she said, what I noticed is they're imperfect. She said, I have no need or desire for them to be perfect. She said, but when I'm doing it with love. And she walks into her child's room and it makes her smile, not because it's perfect, but because it's theirs. It's hers and his, and they love it and enjoy it together. And she said, but at work, I don't give myself the same grace. I only feel good if others tell me I did good. Now, you remember I told you that she has achieved some really amazing results for this organization that is measurable results, like awards have been won, like external validation of worth. And here, we talk about how the need for intrinsic motivation is how we get the life that we want. If everything is based on external validation, it will never be enough. And she noticed that. She said, when I do things with love, not expecting anybody to say, hey, that's great, that's good, it's different. And she can do it with a greater sense of grace and a higher sense of relationship. And so she was going to take that into work now and start to think about, what does work look like without that fear of feedback or fear of not getting the affirmation? Because if she can do work from a place of love, then she can access something that is not only real in terms of her presence of the work that she's doing, but she believes that it will have a more lasting impact on her and not just chasing the next award or the next accolade or the next performance review. So whether it's, a mural on the wall or a meeting agenda, we can do that with love versus fear. The next area that she noticed the difference between love and fear, which is, again, all these were fascinating. I didn't know where this would go, but it's really been profound. She, like many of us, are in, what's called that sandwich generation. We're taking care of kids and wondering and worrying or taking care of our aging parents. And she said, and her aging parents are out of state. They don't live close. And she said she gets really frustrated with her parents because they won't take care of themselves. And she said, I get angry. And I get this. She said, but then I had to ask myself, am I upset about this because I really love them? Or am I in fear that something's going to go wrong and I'm going to have to go take care of it? And I think there's, for many of us, a lot of both that happens there. But the fact that she could ask herself that powerful question, I found really, really interesting, and it's caused me to reflect on a lot of areas in my life as well. So sometimes fear is the counterfeit of love. It gets kind of messy and mixed up in there in what we choose to believe and how we choose to label things. But one way to check yourself is to know that love doesn't control. Love isn't about fixing it to feel safe. Love is about connection. Fear grips us and gives us that sense of anger and frustration, and love opens us up to more connection and releases that control. And then the final area that she summarized to me is, what does healing really look like? Because the word healing has been a trigger word for her, because she's like, what does that even mean? It feels like this big, like, transformational, transcendent moment. And she said, I heard from my coach when on some other things that I was working with, that it's not really the big things that make a difference. It's the little things. And she said, when I see it through that lens, where I'm taking care of myself, where I'm smiling more, I'm getting out in the sunshine and just enjoying how it feels on my skin, I'm being grateful for things, I'm drinking my lemon water before my coffee, or being present with my son, whether it's, I'm meditating and I'm drinking, tea instead of having a cocktail. These are small acts of love. And maybe that's what healing really is. And you can see why it makes me just tear up. You can see why I've sat on this message and really reflected on it for months, because it was so profound. And all of the areas of her life that she was able to map this back, this fear and love back to, and then able to summarize it in just this really beautiful way that it is the small acts of love for ourselves and others that transforms our life. So, thank you. You know who you are, for doing this for me and for us, and for sharing so honestly and vulnerably with me and allowing me to send this out to the world, because I know we can all learn a lot from it. So I put together some reflection questions to get you started on this journey for yourself. First one is, where in your life are you acting out of fear, but calling it responsibility? So kind of like the example of her with her aging parents. What is that for you? Where you're angry about it, you're frustrated about it, you're starting to get bitter about it. Is it actually control that you're trying to achieve because you're afraid of something falling apart? And what would it look like if you switched it to love? Next question is, where do you extend grace to others, but not to yourself? Where are you saying to others, hey, you really need to take care of yourself, and then you haven't taken a break in weeks? Or skipping your lunch, or not going for a walk in the mornings like you used to? Where do you extend grace to others, but not to yourself? I find this sometimes in parents, where they're taking better care of their kids than they are themselves. And your kids are actually paying more attention to your behaviors than your words. And so if you really want to have an impact on them, that might be an area for you. Next question is, what's one small thing that you can do today from a place of love, not lack or fear? And then finally, more of a business workplace question, especially if you are a leader. As you observe the work around you and the meetings and the way people are at work, is your workplace built on fear or love? And what might you do to try to shift some of those things? So I hope that you will choose one thing to do each day, just purely out of love for yourself, for others. And when stress hits, just ask yourself, how could I respond based on love, not fear? All right, y'all. Love you, mean it.
I'm not coming down. I never left it on the ground. I'm not coming down.
Thanks for being here. You can follow us on Instagram, Business is Human, or TikTok, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession. It's a great way to share some of the clips with your colleagues and friends. All right. Make it a great day. Love you, mean it.